In my culture, death is not the end. It's more of a stepping off point. You reach out with both hands and Bast and Sekhmet. They lead you into the green veldt where you can run forever.
Phase 4 was definitely one of Marvel's lowest points compared to earlier phases from 1, 2 to even 3. Starting off strong with the likes of Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home to the likes of WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, where could we go wrong? And Phase 4 really explored where we could actually go wrong.
I keep getting away with it!
With studio interference, Disney not wanting to really go too into TVMA production, stifling beautiful projects like Moon Knight, to even holding back Sam Raimi in the Multiverse of Madness, and Taika Waititi creating a snowball effect with the fans turning on him with the likes of Thor Love and Thunder, to even She-Hulk, exposing a lot of incel fans out there, but not really doing too much about it or bringing a lot to the table. Phase 4 was one of those questionable phases where it starts off really strong, like I said, but it just goes downhill. This phase had to have been the one that would cause a lot of fans to go away, as Phase 3 was pretty much the perfect send-off and could have just ended the cinematic universe there with the likes of Avengers Endgame. With comic book fans, especially myself, wanting more and more as long as they have good storytelling and elements involved, we would want to see what other projects they would have in store for us, and thankfully, Phase 4, in my eyes, ended off strong with the likes of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. As always, I'm your friendly neighborhood host, ThatGuyFranky.
That's right.
Yours truly, and today we discuss how Wakanda Forever has to be one of Phase 4's strongest movies, as well as one of Marvel's best films to date. Now, if you haven't already seen the movie, feel free to click off, as it will feature spoilers and I don't want to give out a whole lot of information to you if you haven't seen it. But if you don't mind being spoiled, feel free to continue on with this video. Knowing the events that followed the late great Chadwick Boseman, Marvel decides to give not just a beautiful tribute, but give him possibly a peaceful off-screen death rather than just recasting the character, and this definitely had to give, or at least be, one of the most emotional opening sequences to date. We come to find out that King T'Challa is battling an unknown illness while Shuri tries her best to save him, but there isn't much that she can do. The nation of Wakanda celebrate and mourn the loss of their king, their Black Panther, because he wasn't just their great leader but their protector, and with his death this would leave the nation without that protector. In the eyes of many nations that are trying to get their hands on vibranium, it would make them feel as if that nation was vulnerable and susceptible, causing many of these nations to try and attack. But thankfully, thanks to Queen Ramonda, Okoye, and Shuri doing their part to keep their people safe, they would bring news and shine the light onto these shady nations, exposing them to the world of the atrocities and the backstabbing that they would go to just to get these weapons of mass destruction. Queen Ramonda, throughout the sequel, does her best at trying to not only help and keep the Wakandans safe, but try and help her relationship with her daughter Shuri, especially after the recent events surrounding her son T'Challa. She tries to get her to open up, to grieve and mourn, as it's not healthy to keep these emotions bottled up. She wants her to try and let go, as it will just grow and consume her. Part of this movie is really just Ramonda trying to bond with her daughter, trying to get her to grow as she wants Shuri to grow and become a great leader and not fear or feel like she's not enough because she's holding on to the past rather than letting go, because Shuri is an amazing character throughout the entirety of Wakanda Forever. She goes through so much obstacles, so much character changes that make her likable and basically the underdog hero. The other half of this movie is also exploring the true meaning of the Black Panther, understanding that it's also a mantle, but it comes with responsibility, and you have to find your inner self when you become the Black Panther. Otherwise, it will lead down two separate paths, with nations trying to find a way to get vibranium to make themselves stronger. The US government plays an important key role in this film. They make an operation in the Atlantic Ocean where they discover vibranium hidden meters below the surface, but rather than striking oil, hitting the lottery and being happy, things would immediately go south and almost turn into a horror movie. The US operation, consisting of Navy SEALs and CIA operatives, are confused by what's going on, as now they have just witnessed the secret society, the secret empire of the Talocan. The Talocanil, as they're referred to, this underwater nation of Mesoamericans, start to place many of these soldiers and scientists into trance-like states, almost like sirens. Some do try and make it out, but they're followed by some of Talocan's fiercest and strongest warriors, as well as the introduction of one of the best characters Marvel has had to offer since the likes of Thanos, this being their god, the one and only.
All my enemies call me Namor.
This is where things get weird, but not in a bad way. It's rather one of those moments where you like it, as it doesn't make the character one-dimensional, rather a fleshed-out character that you can feel sympathy towards. Namor is essentially the movie's villain, but he's more of a flawed character because he's not a bad guy, nor is he really a generic character. Both Ryan Coogler and Joe Robert Cole did a phenomenal job at making Namor this character who has justified reasons, but they're morally wrong the way that he goes about it. The audience can't help but sympathize with him either, as the writers give Namor a tragic backstory. Namor's origins date back to the 16th century, more so the 1500s, when the Spanish colonials raided Mexico. The Aztecs and Mayans were either being wiped out with diseases as mentioned like smallpox, or being turned into slaves and stripped of their culture, forced into colonization, forced into chains. We're briefly introduced to his mother, who is battling the smallpox disease and holding up her hope, as she was currently pregnant with him at this time, and she's trying to help her people survive. Her tribe's shaman would seek out answers from the rain god Shak, where they would discover an herb that would grant them a new way of life. At first, Namor's mother didn't want to drink it, fearing that it would harm the baby, but the shaman would convince her into saying that Namor would be the firstborn of the new nation. After the whole tribe would take this herb, they would fall into a deep sleep, nearly as if they had died, but were reborn into the new tribe, the Talocanil. Their skin would turn blue, and they would need to live underwater as their new way of life. Namor, however, was different. He was born with wings on his ankles, ears different from his kin, as he would mention, ears pointing to the sky, as well as the ability of both flight, superhuman strength, and that of almost speed.
Wow.
But like most origin stories, the character has to lose someone important, and Namor would lose his mother. Before she died, she did have a request. Instead of being buried underwater, she wanted to be buried on her homeland. Namor and his kin go back to the surface to bury his mother, but it's here where his origin goes even darker than it already was. Once back on the surface world, however, when he was trying to bury his mother, Namor and his people would encounter more Spanish colonials, enslaving more people like his. Rather than just sitting back and letting it all happen again and again, Namor and his people would take a stand and burn the colonials down. They would free their people from these chains and bring them to safety. This would also be where Namor would get his name. As to his people, he's referred to as, otherwise known as the Serpent God, where his enemies would call him Namor, the child without love. Namor will do anything to try and keep his people both safe and hidden from the surface world, as they bring nothing but chaos and destruction. One of the things that you also do come to find throughout Wakanda Forever is the similarities between the nation of Talokan and the nation of Wakanda. Wakanda is still thriving, but with the threat of Namor and other nations looking to acquire vibranium, it puts them in danger and thrown into the hot seat as the Americans make a device that can detect and acquire vibranium, and this device is made by the new debuting character known as Riri Williams, who's just a kid and put in danger by the likes of Namor, as now he wants her dead. To try and avoid war, both Shuri and her mother, Queen Ramonda, try to reason with Namor, as their problems are similar and they want nothing but the best for their people, but Namor proves to be stubborn and just too much trouble for them. Wakanda Forever puts both the Wakandans and Talokan against one another with no true villain, rather flawed heroes who want the same thing but will go in different means of doing it. With Wakanda Forever having an all-star cast much like the first film, I wanted to keep this segment short and talk about the main key characters that I felt both Ryan Coogler and Robert Cole wanted to bring to us. Starting off this segment, I wanted to talk about Shuri because I felt that her character was completely different compared to the first Black Panther movie. In the first film, she's presented to us as one of the smartest kids alive, especially being at the young age of 16, making the nation's weapons as well as creating items for her brother T'Challa. When looking back at the first film, I didn't really like her character a whole lot. I found her as annoying, but compared to now, I appreciate her character a whole lot more. And I'm not saying that her character was terrible. I just find her more relatable in this movie because I understand more of the story. I understand the character a lot more now than I did before. In this sequel, the writers make her a troubled and broken character. Nearly everyone involved is going through some sort of pain or grief or holding on to the past rather than letting go. Shuri blames herself for her brother's death as she couldn't save him, and compared to her mother, rather than letting go, she clings onto it and wishes for things to be different. But that's the thing about the past. The more we delve into it, the more it sucks us into a black hole of depravity, and Shuri falls deep into that depravity. She does try to find ways to get out of it, and it helps that she has characters like her mother and Okoye and even Nakia at her side, trying to help her and motivate her to help herself. But loss is one key event throughout, as Shuri also loses her mother during Namor's attack on the city. It leaves her broken and alone, leading a nation by herself. With these struggles and obstacles she encounters, she endures as it helps her and it motivates her to become the next protector, the next Black Panther. It does come with a cost, however, as whenever someone drinks from the herb, they're sent to the ancestral plane, where they are greeted by someone of their choosing, and whoever they may be will help shape the course of events. For Shuri, it ends up being someone she didn't think of a returning Killmonger. Killmonger gets inside her head and tells her that she chose him for a reason. She doesn't want to believe it and tries to justify it, but he mentions the inevitable war at hand and how he would have stood up and handled things rather than run. Killmonger even spites both her brother T'Challa and her father T'Chaka as to how these events would end, but at the end of it, this is all Shuri's decision as well. Would she be noble like her brother, or a hypocrite like her father, who at any given moment would have killed Riri like he did his own brother, or fall into Killmonger's shoes and lead to destruction and chaos? Killmonger's reintroduction was definitely something I expected, especially with hints and rumors ever since the first Black Panther, with the ending, as death is never truly the end in this universe. Queen Ramonda is by far one of the best characters featured in this movie aside from Namor and Shuri. Angela Bassett gave this role her all, as always, by carrying herself and making her character sympathetic and relatable. She's lost everything and everyone at this point, and yet she still tries to move on and lead her nation like she has to, even with countless attacks looming and the possibility of invasions from the likes of Namor's people. The rest of the world wants vibranium, even if it means going behind Wakanda's back, but Ramonda is smart and does an amazing job at keeping the invaders at bay and in check. With the help of Okoye and the Dora Milaje, their defenses are up, and with the nation coming together, all seems well until Namor's introduction, with the US trying to get their hands on vibranium to make weapons of mass destruction and finding it in the ocean. Namor and the Talocan don't let this go unnoticed and inevitably kill them. With the death of all of these Americans, the blame is put on Wakanda, as vibranium is part of their source, but more so, Namor's nation is still one that remains in the shadows, and vibranium is the only source known to man thanks to Wakanda. Ramonda does all she can to try and get to Namor, but he's not interested and would rather prefer the idea of killing Riri and forcing Wakanda to help them when they could just be allies. Ramonda steps up for the nation and protects Riri from Namor, but this doesn't have a happy ending for her. With Ramonda protecting Riri from Namor and the Talocan, this leads to her death and sets up the war between Wakanda and Talocan. Her death wasn't just a plot device either. Her death shows the lengths that she would go to try and protect her nation and protect the innocent. Namor wouldn't really throw himself for anyone aside from his kin, whereas Ramonda would step up for anyone. Her death helps shape Shuri's character and presents her as this strong, loving, and caring queen that protected not just her, but an innocent girl as well. I want to talk about Namor. I really had mixed feelings about him, as Marvel's track records with villains tend to lead to either short stories not being executed properly or, just killing them off in one movie. Kinda like what they did with Killmonger, but thankfully Killmonger was brought back here. Listening to interviews involving the likes of Tenoch Huerta, Alex Livanelli, and Mabel Cadena, to even Ryan Coogler, they discussed the importance of these characters and how important it was to make Namor stand out, especially with building the culture and world. Namor in the comics was one of the first wave of characters that came off as a charismatic, arrogant, and sexy character, best described by Coogler, but with Aquaman also being a character in DC and them making the first Atlantean superhero, Coogler and Cole stepped up their game with Namor in a way that wouldn't just fit the MCU, but more specifically, the Black Panther universe. Coogler is a man that loves to delve deep into cultures and their roots and did a great job with the first Black Panther film, but with Wakanda Forever, he wanted to explore Mesoamerican culture through Namor, another sovereign kingdom with deep roots. Coogler and company wanted Namor to be completely different so as to not draw Aquaman references or come off like a cheap copy. But I'm gonna be honest right now. Tenoch Huerta could definitely take on Jason Momoa's Aquaman any day, because if I gotta be honest, Namor captures what Aquaman's supposed to be, but 1,000 times better. Tenoch Huerta embodied the character of Namor so well, and he knocked this role out of the ballpark, and I really can't wait to see him return for more projects in the future, because I want to see more of Namor. His character is just one that I don't think we're gonna get enough of a whole lot. He just brings so much to the table, and there's so many things that they can do with Namor if they have the right ideas, the right creative minds involved to bring more stories of his to life. Wakanda Forever is one of those sequels in a franchise that you can't really go back and compare to the first film, as they feel like two separate entities on their own. I know that for some, this will be the better movie of the two, but to me, both movies are just as good. Coogler and Cole do a remarkable job at bringing the sequel to life and bringing the world, from the casting to the world building and expanding onto their very own universe, not really tying it into the MCU formula, but making it a story rather than just something bland that we've seen with so many cameo after cameo after bad joke after bad joke. They made Wakanda Forever stand out. There is one character I didn't really click with as much, and I know that for some people this is gonna probably piss them off or annoy them in some ways because my take is gonna sound bad, but I gotta be completely honest about this one. Riri Williams is a cool and fun character throughout the movie, but I feel that she could have been a lot better. There's not a whole lot that I felt they really achieved with the character, and don't get me wrong, Dominique Thorne does great, especially with the script and the way that she brings her character to life, but I know that the character in the comics is, I think, a 15 or 16-year-old whiz kid that's inspired heavily by Iron Man, and you can see it in the movie, the way that she makes her first Mark I suit to the Ironheart suit. But with the way that the story is going, and with the MCU trying to make more of the Young Avengers, especially with Kate Bishop, Kamala Khan, and countless other characters, I felt that if Riri Williams was at least a bit older, it would have probably had a lot more depth for the story, but it's still fine for what it is. I just don't really click with Riri. And again, I'm not saying she's a terrible character. She's probably just one of the characters that I didn't click with as much. She is cool, and I do like her moments every now and then. Dominique Thorne, you did a great job. Riri Williams will probably get a lot better, especially in Armored War, so let's see where it goes from there. The action sequences in this film were well choreographed, and the one thing that I truly admire is the CGI, because one thing that a lot of people, a lot of fans complain about the first movie is the CGI, not just in the first Black Panther film, but the CGI for almost every single Marvel movie. You can tell when there's good CGI versus bad CGI, and where Black Panther suffered, at least with the first movie, the worst CGI had to have been their final fights between Killmonger and T'Challa. What could have been a great fight just looked like a bad Unreal Engine mod render that could have been finished if, CGI artists had a lot more time instead of Disney breathing down their necks, forcing them to shit out content after content like YouTube forces us to shit out content after content in order to get these views. Please help my channel if you can. I'm begging you. I'm at 505. I need to get to 600 by Christmas, please. That's my Christmas miracle wish. That's my present I want. Please. Moving on though. The CGI is really good in this film, and the cinematography is breathtaking to witness. The production crew did a phenomenal job at bringing to life Mesoamerican culture, making sure that the Talocan were representing Latino culture. They paid attention to a lot of details, making the pyramids, making a lot of the fashion design similar to how a lot of the culture was way back in the day. The film also made sure that Namor was presented as this brute force to be reckoned with, but also a kind and empathetic king, just really troubled and flawed, because he would do, again, whatever it would take to protect his people, whereas Shuri was the underdog that we rooted for till the very end. I love the similarities and differences that both nations had, as they both wanted to ensure their people protection from other nations willing ill upon them or stealing their resources to empower them and make them stronger. It's just the way that both nations' leaders went about going their decisions. Wakanda Forever is truly one of their best films, as well as the strongest ending to Phase 4, which some people refer to as the trauma or the grief phase. I know for some people Wakanda Forever isn't going to be the best film. I've already seen countless reviews and video essays saying that it's one of the worst ones, or it's just woke, or another MCU type project, but Wakanda Forever isn't even that. If they had paid attention to the writing and the care that the writers and the directors and the actors actually brought to make this movie stand out, they would see that this movie has a lot of importance and it's something different from just the boring formula that we're all just used to. Another thing I also did want to mention is that I was truly happy that Coogler and Cole didn't recast T'Challa, as there was a small minority of fans wanting T'Challa to be recasted to continue the story, but Chadwick Boseman embodied T'Challa so well that he immortalized him. The best way that I can say it, Chadwick is essentially Black Panther, much like Brandon Lee is the Crow. Tony Stark is the 616 Iron Man, the Iron Man that we grew up with. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. Recasting T'Challa would have honestly just hurt the movie, and it wouldn't have looked good in the eyes of others. It would have just tainted the Black Panther legacy. They made the right decision, the right call, by passing the torch, passing the mantle of the Black Panther onto Shuri. Through Shuri, she would carry the legacy and the mantle of the Black Panther and also be the protector of Wakanda. The film also doesn't just stop there. It decides to get even more emotional and go for the waterworks towards the end, or the post-credits if you will. Nakia reveals to Shuri that her and T'Challa had a son, naming him T'Challa as well, and through him, more than likely in the future, we can at least expect another Black Panther and possibly more rivalries with Namor. But for now, I'm just really glad that Shuri got to be the Black Panther and that we didn't have to go through another recast. Overall, when it comes to my thoughts on Wakanda Forever, I think this has to be one of my favorite movies. I think this is going to definitely be in my top 5 and probably dethrone No Way Home or dethrone some of my favorite films, because this movie was just emotional. The lengths they went through to make a lot of these characters stand out and relatable and bring so many themes, empowering a lot of characters just so that this movie could feel different from that MCU formula, really felt special. Wakanda Forever gets a 9 out of 10 from me, and I highly encourage you guys to watch it if you already have it. And also, I know some of you guys are going to be expecting a certain cameo. Look, if you're expecting a certain metalhead bucket dude coming in around the film, just lower your expectations to 0. This film was more focused on making their own story. This was going to be a story about Wakanda and its people, and the story of Namor and the Talocan. And as always, guys, it's been your friendly neighborhood host, ThatGuyFranky.
That's right.
Yours truly. But before we sign off on today's video, I just want to say thank you guys again for 500 subs. I truly appreciate every single one of you for helping out the channel, helping it grow. I really hope that I can grow on this platform. I really hope that I can make content that you guys can enjoy.
I love you guys.
And yeah, that's about it. Enough of the waterworks, but thank you guys again. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.
Silver platter splattered with love. It's a natural reaction, like the need to pet a pigeon or dove. But the sky and the ground all make too